Hi, I'm Anke Summerhill from Minotti London, and today for our sofa chat, which in fact is not on a sofa but on the beautiful thin chairs, I have what I can only describe as the goddess of the financial and banking world, Marisa Drew. And Marisa is the first officer, Sustainability Officer for Credit Suisse. So Marisa, welcome and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what exactly your role entails and how you got there.
Okay, so I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Credit Suisse, and I also head up a group we call Sustainability Strategy Advisory and Finance. And I'd say at its heart, what I say is I get up every day and help save the world. Because at its core, my job is really to mobilize capital to help solve some of the world's biggest challenges, whether they be environmental or social. And both of those are pretty big issues for our times. And so it's a very gratifying role. I do feel like it's a role with purpose. But it's also a role that's come to me after 35 years of traditional investment banking. So I grew up in the world, a very dominated world of, male-dominated world of finance. In a very traditional sense, I've spent much of my career raising capital for early-stage, high-growth companies. And now what I get to do with all that experience is to translate that into a very purposeful direction of capital.
That is a pretty amazing story.
Privileged.
So did you ever think you'd end up in a role like this? I mean, when you were younger and as a student, were you very driven and ambitious and you had a plan? You thought, okay, I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to leave my mark in this world.
It's such a great question. Actually, I say I was a kid with a lot of energy and no direction. That was entirely me. So one of these kids that literally would dip in and out of everything. So I come from a family of public service. My father was a Top Gun pilot in the Air Force. And so I initially thought that I wanted to serve my country somehow. And originally I thought that was going to be in the form of politics. So I had an internship with a politician, and when I did that, I realized very quickly that you don't get things done very fast, and you have
As a politician,
and you're always appealing to your constituency, not necessarily always what you feel needs to be done. Yeah. And I found that very frustrating. So that was not the career for me. And then I thought, well, maybe I can serve my country in the diplomatic corps in the State Department. Yeah. And I had an internship there. And then I realized that the wheels have changed, moved very, very slowly, not fast enough. And then I said, how about the corporate world? Because maybe that's a place. And my internship in the corporate world was a very 9-to-5 type of job, and I found myself intellectually quite bored. So at 4:59, I kept staring at my watch with my trainers on, ready to go. And I think it's because I wasn't intellectually challenged. And then I stumbled onto the world of finance. And that was it for me. It was just a moment for me when I realized, because of all of that energy that I have, I need to be doing things that capture my attention, that are fast-paced, and that's what the markets are all about. So the moment I found finance, really, I never looked back. After 35 years, I always wish I could clone myself 5 times over and have 24 more hours in the day. And I think that's a mark of finding your passion, is that you're never bored, always hoping that there's more time to get more done.
Okay, so that also answers one of my other questions, which was, have you ever considered a career change? But clearly not. You tried out. So would you suggest this is a good idea for many people who are kind of unsure what their direction is? Because I find a lot of young people struggle. They go off to university, they don't really know what they want to study. What did you actually study? Did you know what you wanted to study?
So no, I didn't. And to your point exactly is that I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves, especially young people, that you have to find the career in your first trial. The research shows, and in each generation, actually, the number of businesses gets longer, meaning that our parents' generation, you worked for the same company for life.
Forever,
Our generation, it's something on the average of 3 to 5 companies, typically. 2 generations from now, they say the average will be 7 to 10 different companies. And I have a little saying, I say, life is as much about finding out what you don't want to do as it is what you do want to do. And how do you know unless you go through a process of trial and error? So for me, it was all of this quest, and I kept with every, I think, experience, trying to be quite deliberate in saying, the one thing I can say without a plan was to say, out of these experiences, what about that role or that job or that internship did I really like that spoke to me, that gave me energy, and what are the things that really bothered me? And then with each successive thing, I tried to do more of the thing that appealed to me and maybe self-actualized and less of the other. And then eventually, you know, you sort of find that thing. But I mean, I gave you a few of my experiences, but not only, you know, I had a stint in private equity, I was an entrepreneur, I founded a company. I mean, each one of those things I thought was going to be the thing.
I need to know what you started.
Okay, well, this is going to show my age. Okay, so I hands up, admit that.
Age is good.
Age, experience, and wisdom.
Yeah.
So this was back in the day when we did not have PCs in homes and schools.
I remember
those good old days.
Yes,
and the machine was extremely expensive, and people were really afraid to touch them because they thought they would break this important machine. But everybody at that time felt that the way to get ahead was to have computer literacy. So I ended up running learning centers for computer education. And we literally taught everyone from 2-year-olds who were naturally facile. They would immediately go to the mouse and start playing around, to the adults who were, I can't touch the machine. And it was fascinating about that experience because I always thought that I would be an entrepreneur when I was in my 50s or whatever later in life.
Yes.
But an opportunity came where somebody was willing to back me with capital if I would run this business.
Yes.
So I said, if I don't do it, I will always ask why not. So I jumped in with both feet, and the business was actually very successful. But after I got it up and running, I was intellectually bored because I opened one center, and then what else was I going to do? Open another and another and another. But
the challenge
it was sort of plateaued. And the other thing that I really learned about being an entrepreneur, and this is very personal to me, but I get energy from people, and I realized I had always had this notion that I wanted to work for a small business because I thought small was good and non-hierarchical and non-political and all this stuff. But when I had my first taste of working for a large company, I really loved the sparring partners of my peers and getting around the table and figuring things out, whereas when you're an entrepreneur, it's actually really lonely when you're starting up a business.
It's very lonely.
And I missed the energy of people. And I also, it was an enormous amount of pressure. Do you know that sort of responsibility and the weight on my shoulders of every decision I was making meant whether the company lives or dies, or whether I'm going to make payroll and all of this. And I tell you, in investment banking, we often work 3 all-nighters in a row on an M&A deal. I'll take that stress all day long. The entrepreneurial stress really weighed on me.
Yes.
And that was very unique to me, but it was a moment where I realized that being an entrepreneur was not what I wanted to do with my life. So thankfully, I had somebody come and offer to buy my company, so it sort of bailed me out. And then I could go back to big company.
Do you feel that experience has helped you, though,
100%.
in your life? Because you actually can put yourself in the shoes of the entrepreneur. Because 100%. It is, I think very often people don't realize that they see someone with their own business and say, oh, you're so lucky.
Yes.
You have your own business. But they don't see the sleepless nights, the stress, the responsibility of having employees in times such as COVID. Which for many small businesses and young businesses has been very challenging. Yeah. Now, the other thing you touched on, which is very true, when you do start your own business and you are on your own, you can only discuss it with yourself, which is also very stressful. And you said how you get energy and love collaborating and working with other people. Now, how do you feel like during Brexit, people, COVID, too much going on, COVID, people working from home, and I'm in a creative industry, and personally, I found it didn't inspire me. I missed being with other people and bouncing off ideas. So what do you feel about the working from home?
Yes.
Are you in favor? I think it's good for work balance. I think it's nice that people can have a little bit more time at home and not so stressed with travel. But overall, what is your opinion on that?
It's going to be a nuanced answer because everything in life is. It's not black or white. I can say that, so I've been on a plane 30 years, mostly long haul, 3 days a week for all this time. Yeah. And to have it all come to a halt was a real shock to my system. And when I actually was not permanently jet lagged, I said, wow, this is how the real world lives. And I enjoyed the fact that I wasn't racing to the airport or on a different time zone for a moment in time. And then we moved to this Zoom world. And I learned something, right? Because you thought you'd get all of this time back. And what I think a lot of us, and I'm very guilty of not being able to say no, is that in that normal time when you would have had time to yourself on a plane or in transit, what did we do? We said yes to another conference call. So I would find myself from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, literally on a call after call after call with no breaks. You know, run downstairs to grab a sandwich or something like this. But I was ending up working way more hours in a funny way, having zero time for reflection and strategizing and all of this. Because you felt a little bit guilty by saying, I'm going to take some time. And I think that that's where I got it wrong, if I'm honest. But I do think that if we can set some boundaries and have a hybrid opportunity, that's the best. And I have to say, the other thing that was really surprising to me after 12-hour Zoom days, I couldn't understand why I was so tired at the end of the day. I kept saying, I'm not jet lagged, I'm not on a plane, why am I so tired? But now they're doing all this research, this neurological research that says when you're on a screen it zaps your energy because you don't get the feedback. And so you're constantly, your brain and everything else is wired to try to receive that feedback that you really don't get on screen. So I think from a health point of view, it's actually not great. But I have to balance that with the freedom of not having to commute. And I'm very sensitive, particularly my teams with young families who, do spend a lot of their lives commuting in and out. And to get that time back with your family and your kids, I think is something that's pretty precious. So I am definitely a big advocate of being flexible and having some sort of a balance. But the one thing I'll tell you, when we started traveling again back in September, when I had my first in-person meetings or conferences, it was like a jolt of energy. I got that adrenaline rush. I thought, wow, okay, this is what I'm missing. I'm missing the human connection.
Human connection. Well, I think we're herd animals. I don't think we're meant to be sitting in isolation and speak to people on screens. I did not find it. I used it because it was incredibly useful when we had to. But yes, me too. I was incredibly happy when I could meet up with people face to face again, like we are doing today.
Now,
so you already touched a little bit on the work private life balance. Have you managed to maintain that well throughout your career, or have you? When you look back, can you see you've spent crazy hours?
It's a great question. I get asked this all the time, particularly in our field. No. It's because it's a natural question, particularly when people think of investment banking, which is sort of 24/7.
Absolutely.
But when you're in a client service business, your job is to meet the needs of your clients, whatever they may be when they are. And a lot of banking is about very, very defined timelines. If you don't meet a deadline to raise finance or meet some sort of an agreement on a contract, then the deal will fall away, and that's what we're paid to do. And we don't manufacture anything. So the only thing we have in banking is human capital. And so therefore it is an all-in kind of a business. Now, my approach to this was not so much work-life balance, because it's complete work-life imbalance, but I sort of reframe that narrative a little bit. What I mean by that is my clients give me energy, and because I love people, I view that as enriching my life. And so therefore it was never this black and white distinction between work and private life. My clients have become my friends, and the experiences that I've had through my career in banking are some of the most incredible things. They're almost hard to describe. Building the O2 Arena with my hard hat and my wellies on was one of the seminal moments in London. This iconic building that we converted into, one of the world's largest most visited concert venues. That's an experience through banking, and the people who built that are some of my dearest friends. And yet, was it work when I'm going to a concert at a venue that I built, or was it pleasure? These things are very intertwined, so I look at them very much as they're mutually reinforcing, so then it was never this one or the other. But the one thing I have been very, very careful to do is to have lots of outside interests, because first of all, I think it makes you better in business, whether it's banking or anything else, because who wants to talk to a monochromatic person who can only talk about work? So I have, as I said, a lot of energy and a short attention span, so I need to feed my brain, and so I get involved in lots of things. So I need to kind of have lots of fingers in pots. So I'm a fledgling golfer, and I make wine, and I read a lot, and I am a venture capital investor, an angel investor.
It's like you're guessing my questions. I was going to ask, are there any passions, secret passions,
many
any
passions,
loves? I mean, is there a creative person hiding in this amazing businesswoman? So you mentioned golf, so that's good. That gets you out.
Good to get me out, although I'm really rubbish.
And then you drink drink wine, which you can make yourself.
And I make wine, and I make olive oil. But I guess I always say I'm a frustrated creative in the sense that I feel like I don't have a creative bone in my body, but I appreciate deeply people who have creative talent. And so one of the things that I've done also to kind of feed my soul a little bit is to help support creatives. So whether it be fashion, shoes, jewelry, I do quite in my personal time help along those who are in the creative field, because a lot of them are what they do best is apply their creative talents, but they may not know how to translate that into a business plan or to raise money or whatever the thing is.
Absolutely. This is what I find, that creativity and business don't always go. The best artists and designers I know are not necessarily the best business people. So I think that is a lovely thing to do. And so you clearly have an interest in design.
Yes.
So what makes home for you? What does it take for you to walk through the door and feel, I'm home?
It's a place where I can breathe. I like space and light, so that's pretty important to me, but that's kind of a funny thing that we're saying when we are in gray zone in London.
There is
but
light
I do
here.
think there's still light here. It's a different kind of light.
Yes.
But I do, when I get to Africa, with that just endless sunsets and that purity of light, I just relax.
And
I
the
call it
colors.
Happy Land, and the colors are sharp and amazing. But what else makes home? It is my personal things. Even if I were to have design influences from a designer, what I really need are my own things in the house. I don't need somebody to curate that for me, because then it's not very personal. So that's important. And back to our sort of admiration of creatives, my art and sculptures, those my pieces really matter. I mean, I love turning over and looking at a piece of sculpture that I found that speaks to me in some way. That's how I buy my art, So
it gives you pleasure.
Gives me pleasure. Yeah. And then, of course, a good kitchen, because my other creative side is I'm a frustrated chef. Chef. I love to cook. I
don't know where you find the time for all these things.
I don't sleep very much. Sleep's not in the equation. That's for later.
Okay. So you love to cook as well. So you have good kitchens wherever.
Gotta have a good kitchen. Gotta have a good kitchen.
Amazing. So what would we never find in any of your homes?
Never find?
Yeah, something you would never have. Something you really...
That's a really interesting. No one's asked me that. That's going to take me a minute to think about.
You can ponder on it. You don't have to answer that.
Probably, you'd never find something that's made to look like it's designed, but it has no purpose. So, shall I say fake books? When someone creates a fake bookshelf, fake library, you probably wouldn't see that in my house.
I think that probably was a big thing during COVID. Everybody suddenly had to have bookshelves behind them while they're on their Zoom meetings to look intelligent or something.
I have huge piles of design books, because I do love to look at pictures. I am visual in some ways, and so it gives me great pleasure to just flip through a great cookbook or a great art book or architecture book. So that you'll find in my house.
Yes.
But I guess that you wouldn't find things that don't have either a meaning or a purpose.
Okay. And is that a favorite piece you have? An all-time favorite? Say you're in your house, it's burning down, and you're told you can just take one thing with you. What is, again, a horrible question.
Yeah, it is, because I've probably grabbed many things, other than what I'd say, that very classic of, your photographs that mean something to you. Those are the obvious things.
Yes.
But I have some artwork that is really special. I have a bust of an African woman in my home here in London that is made by he's actually principally a painter called Lionel Smith, who is in his, I guess, late 30s probably, who I found a decade ago. I walked into a gallery and he had a painting of an African face, a woman, the eyes were intense and just grabbed me, and I wanted to buy a piece. And then we became very friendly and commissioned him to do a piece for my house, and he's also on one of my vintages of my wine on a label. And then as a tribute to his father, who was a sculptor, he actually started doing some sculpture work, and that very same African woman who's on my painting and on my wine label, he did a sculpture of. And that is just one of those pieces that every time I look at it brings me pleasure. Okay, so I'd probably grab that on the way out.
Definitely grab that.
If I could carry it. That'd be hard.
Okay. Now, Marisa, a horrible question again. What's on your bedside table?
Oh gosh.
If that's not too personal.
No, not at all. So back to the point of not sleeping very well.
Yeah. Sleeping
I have
pills?
all of those wonderful sleeping aids, lavender pillow sprays, and those oils that you put on to try to make you sleep, and a little bottle of melatonin every time it doesn't work. And then you will find I'm trying to wean myself off of it because I know it's not great for sleep, but I have my iPad because I read on my iPad. When I don't sleep, I read. I have a Kindle, but I keep diverting to the iPad. And then I have an entire stack of books too. So you'll find all of that on my, my night table.
At least you're awake in a pleasant fashion, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so Marisa, one last question. If you could be Prime Minister for a day, what would you do? And is there any law you'd like to impose?
Wow, you're asking me some very tough questions for an early morning.
I'm very sorry. You don't have to answer.
No. I because probably this is my passion and my work, is that I would create policy that would enable a faster mobilization of capital to help mitigate climate change and also some of our social inequities. You know, one of the things that COVID obviously brought us is the wealthy got wealthier, and those who are less fortunate probably went the other way.
Yes.
And whether it's affordable housing or access to quality goods and services, healthcare, et cetera, even though we have the wonderful NHS, you know, these things they're not sustainable for a healthy, prosperous society in the long and intermediate term. And we're seeing this play out in politics and some of the issues that have surfaced during COVID. So that's the one whole area. The second area is the environment. Deeply passionate about doing what we can, and you know, I think we all too often say, "What can one person do?" But what one person does is an individual collection of actions that add up to a lot.
Yes.
But you know, there's a little bit of this feeling now in my field that it's all up to the private sector because, you know, governments don't have enough money. But yet what government officials can do is, through policy making, create those enabling conditions to support more capital flowing, and that will help create a positive, virtuous circle. So if I were a prime minister for a day, I'd focus on those two topics. Those are biggies, but that's what I would do.
You're going to need more than a day.
There we go, back to saving the world.
I'm loving your thinking. Marisa, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you so much for coming. I could talk to you for hours, but
well, it's a fun chat, so thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to see some more of our videos, including the suggestion on the screen, please click on the Minotti London logo to subscribe.